In this module, we will look at how VLOOKUP is commonly used when one wants to merge and analyze data or create dashboard. Let's try to understand with an example in which scenarios VLOOKUP can be used. Imagine we have this table which lists out the income bracket and their corresponding tax rates. Now imagine we want to automate the process of finding tax rates given some income bracket. For example, if someone puts in an income bracket of $0 to $99999, then the tax rate corresponding to it, which is 15%, should automatically show up. In scenarios like this, VLOOKUP can help. VLOOKUP can take income bracket as an input, and corresponding to a specific income bracket, it can output the tax rate. Let's look at the syntax of this function first. This function accepts three main parameters. The first parameter is the lookup value. In this case, it will be the cell reference where we will feed in the income bracket. The second parameter is the array of values from which one needs to match the lookup value to the value to be extracted. In our case, this is going to be the cell reference for this table. The last parameter is the position of cells from which we want to get the output in relation to the column from which the lookup is happening. In our case, this would have a value of 2, as the second column in this table is the column corresponding to the tax slab. Also, its index or position will be second if we start counting from the column from which the values are to be matched. That is the column on income slab. The income slab is the first column, and corresponding to it, the tax slab is the second column. Now that we know what the syntax looks like, let's see how we can use the VLOOKUP function. This is the data where we now have the income levels and the tax rate. What we want to do is we want to use VLOOKUP function to automate the process of inputting an income level and then getting its corresponding tax rate. For example, if a user inputs this income level, then our function should automatically display a tax rate of 30%. Let's see how we can do that. The first thing we'll do is we will do some data validation and create a drop down for the income level at some place on our Excel sheet. Let's say I want to create a cell called income bracket, and let's do some data validation here. Let me go to the data tab. Let me go to data validation, and let's select the list as one of the options. And in the source, let's select these values. Now you can see we have a drop down, and if we select this drop down, we can get different values. Now we will use the VLOOKUP function to refer to this cell and then do a lookup in this table and find the corresponding tax rate. Let me create a column on tax rate, and then now let's use the VLOOKUP function. So the first input is the lookup value, which is going to be this cell. The second input is going to be the table array in which I want to do the lookup. This would be this range of values. The third input is going to be the column index. Now, if you remember, the column index is the position of the column in relation to the column where we are doing the lookup. Now, in relation to income level column, tax rate is at position 2. So I will put the number 2 here. And now you can see I'm getting the corresponding tax rate. If I change the income bracket by choosing some other number from the dropdown, I get a different tax rate. Now that we have looked at an example on how VLOOKUP function can be used, let's look at another example. Many times while doing data analysis, you will find yourself working on data which is spread across different sheets. Imagine you're working for a company such as Airbnb and you're tasked to analyze data on room listings. The data on listings is in one sheet and the data on owners of the listings is in another sheet called hosts. In order to analyze this data, we will need to join both of these tables. But how will we join them? As you can see, there are two columns, host ID in this sheet and column host ID in this sheet, which are common in both the sheets. We can use this column to do the join, but how will we do this using Excel? We can use our good old friend VLOOKUP to do that. Here is the Excel sheet which contains the data on listings. And you can see that we have a column called host ID. We have another sheet. So you can see this is a sheet where the data on the owners of the listings is present. Now, if I want to analyze this data, I would have to join the data in sheet listings as well as the data in sheet hosts. Now, the way I can do that is I can use VLOOKUP to look for the host IDs that are present in the listing sheet and then match the corresponding values in the columns host name, host since, host location, and host about. Let us see how we can do that. Let's first copy these column names from the host sheet to the listings sheet. Now, let's use VLOOKUP and let's select this value that we want to do a lookup for. Next, we will need to select the table array from which we need to do the lookup. And that table happens to be in the hosts sheet. So I need to go to the host sheet. I need to select this row. And then in order to select the whole column, I can hold Shift, Control, and down key to select the whole column. Let's go back to a listing sheet. The next parameter value that I'll need to supply is the position of the column in relation to the column that I'm doing a lookup for. Now, if I go to the hosts table, as you can see, the host name is the second column, host since is the third column, host location is the fourth column, and host about is the fifth column in relation to host ID. Let's go back to our listing sheet. We can exploit this fact to do a lookup. If I want to look up the host name, I simply need to put a number 2 here, and I will be able to look up the host name corresponding to this host ID. Now, if I want to do this at scale and for all columns, what I need to do is first fix these cell references using a $sign, and then I can just double click on this and my lookup is now working for the host name. For the host since column, as well as host location and host about column, I can just copy this formula as of now. And then all I need to do is just change this index. As you know, host since is the third index in relation to host ID. Host location is the fourth column and host about is the fifth column. Now I will select this row and double click here to extend my formula. And now you can see I have consolidated the data between the two sheets.